Everybody, this is Perch. I'm sensitive to the fact that you come on to a YouTube channel talking about comics, and the person is like, bitch, bitch, bitch about current comics. And oh man, it was so much wonderful back in the old days where there was really great comics and boobs, and it was amazing. And blah blah blah. Chris Claremont, Jim Shooter, etc. And I'm certainly nostalgic for a bunch of things back in the day. I have my favorites. I think my favorites in the past are sometimes line up with yours, sometimes doesn't. I really like the 5 years later run in Legion of Superheroes, and I think that's pretty polarizing. So several people do not. I love John Byrne's Fantastic Four, and I've rarely met somebody who dislikes that. So, that's popular. Walt Simonson, Thor, all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to make this a little bit different, maybe a little bit. A a different kind of I don't know way of thinking about this, and that is to say, rather than go into the it used to be great, now it sucks. Instead, more along the lines of what's something that's fundamentally different, and not go down the same rat hole of it's politics, it's woke, it's not woke, it's the people writing it or a bunch of weirdo, like whatever. It's what's something very substantive, very like you could measure it as a metric. I do those sales analysis. What's something like that could actually look at the differences in the content that are going on in the comics. And I think there's one fairly very easy one to look at that is hard to deny, and it probably plays to different audiences. So in some cases, I think there are people who like the more modern version better than the older version. But on the whole, more people probably will prefer the way it used to be done versus the way it's done now. And I don't know exactly how to describe what this thing is, so I'm going to just play with some words here. But I'm going to go with this one, density. Density can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you use it. In this case, I'm saying it's a good thing. And I'm making the argument that comic books, the style of comics, how they were written, how they were produced, were more dense in the sense that more happened, more occurred. There was more ways of describing things, more thought bubbles, speech bubbles, language, all these kinds of things. There's just more. And that more led to a feeling that the book you were reading had more substance to it, had more, for lack of a better word, density. When you paid, 75 cents for a comic and you picked it up, you felt like you were getting a pretty involved story. It was not a small story. It was a big, you felt like it took you a good 15, 20 minutes to read it, perhaps. Whereas today, the style of storytelling tends to rely more on visual gags, like the artist will have the same panel over and over again for the whole page, and with only like a small thought bubble, like I'm really bored, and nothing is really happening. And it's meant to convey a feeling or a mood. But the result is, to do that successfully, you need kind of a gifted writer, you need a gifted artist combo, and the person who's reading it has to be in the right frame of mind, has to be kind of in the frame of mind to be up for that visual gag. Otherwise, it feels pretty shallow as a book, and you just kind of zoom through it, and then you're irritated. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of this stuff today feels like. And there's a bunch of things that play into it. The decompression of storylines, taking something that, once upon a time would have been one issue, one and done of a story, and maybe they would have flown through some of the details. Now it's stretched out to six comics to make up this one story. And, you might say, oh, that's providing more depth and more complexity. So a story told over 6 comics at 20 pages should be more complex than a story told, in one, 48-page special, or, and except to fill out those pages, they use more of kind of big splash images, scenes that may not matter. It's a little bit like a movie that has been edited. And have you ever, I used to be a sucker for this. They'd advertise as like, get the director's cut with over 30 minutes of additional footage. And you're like, oh wow, I wonder. I love this movie. I wonder what that additional footage is like. I remember I liked the movie Seven. I thought it was a fun, engaging, good movie. And they got me with like 20 minutes of director's cut footage, never before seen. And the first problem is you buy it and you discover that director's cut footage was not finished, so it's maybe green screened in some areas and everything else. And two, it's just a bunch of clips. So deleted scenes. So it used to be that the deleted scenes were the extra scenes that were in the library and go view them one by one. And director's cut meant the actual movie itself was longer because those scenes that were removed were put back in. And then at some point they just started lying about this. And director's cut meant there's additional footage in there we didn't bother to finish, and it's kind of crammed in a little clickable library. And that always pissed me off. I was always like, anyway. But if you watch the director's cut, whether it's sewn into the movie or not, one takeaway you almost always get is, yeah, I'm glad they cut this out. This extra stuff is there's no value to it. This is actually useless. Almost invariably, the scenes that they deleted were good scenes to delete, meaning they slowed the movie down. They just added no value. It's like maybe it added a character moment that you didn't need to see as an audience. You're like, yeah, I got it. I understand what you're going for. You didn't need to have this extra scene that really drills in the point. We all got it. And usually editing in this sense is a good thing. Comic books today are often, to me, often feel that way. Like there's a bunch of footage in this comic that should have been just deleted. Did we really need to see Peter Parker, several pages of him going to Norman Osborn's building, kind of in the new issue, meeting Kamala Khan? Kamala Khan looks absolutely nothing like herself because John Romita Jr. is drawing her completely different from every other rendition we've ever seen. Sorry, that's something else. But we get him like, hey, I'll bet that bothered you. And then Peter, like a scene of him like, yeah. And then Peter of him frowning, yeah, it does. Then a scene of Peter angrily stomping. And you're looking at all this going, if I compare this to comics in the 70s, 80s, etc., they didn't have all these extra scenes. The story just clicked along. And if you go even further back, go like 60, 70, you get into the Silver Age, I guess, and you look at some of those wacky Superman stories that every now and then I review, and they're just batshit insane. It's amazing how much comic, the journey you go on in like 12 pages, because these comics usually had multiple stories going on into them. And one of these 12-page stories could have Superman like flying around, trying to rescue somebody, turned into a magical demon, running amok, saving himself, realizing that there's a clone of himself somehow that he has to go take care of, flying over there. Brainiac shows up, beats him, screws with Lex Luthor a little bit, goes to the Fortress Salted, like in 12 pages. Like you go on a journey, and the story feels dense. It feels like a lot's happening. And today, you can thumb through a comic really, really quickly. The decompression, the reuse of art panels, the visual gags, all of this stuff combines to make the overall product less substantial. And then if you're paying $4.99 for it, you're like, I paid a lot of money for something that I burned through in about 2 minutes. And that doesn't feel particularly good. Take the new, as a case in point, take the new Avengers X-Men Eternals, which I'm valiantly attempting to read. So 2 issues in, and it's like the Eternals say they want to attack the mutants. So they send a bunch of random machines down, and then we got just panel after panel of like the machines are just blowing the shit out of Krakoa, and the people are like, we got to stop this. And then they're doing stuff. And it doesn't help that there's all these tie-ins that basically do the exact same battle just from a different angle. And then the end of the second issue, it's like, hey, the Celestial we built now says he's going to judge the planet. And you're like, in a comic in the 70s, this would have been like 3 pages to get to this point. And the fact that it's all drawn out, it doesn't make the story feel deeper. It makes the story feel more shallow. We just got page after page of unmemorable, just people fighting machines. Anyway, that's kind of my observation. I don't know if it holds water, so I toss it over to you. What do you think? Is this a factor? Is what I'm saying ring true, or is it complete and absolute bullshit? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.